everybody. This is Miss Starbuck coming to you from BEU. I am the art teacher there, and I am super excited to introduce all of you to my really good friend, Amie Plante, who is a jewelry designer. She lives in Rhode Island. So welcome, Amie.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start out by asking Amie a little bit about, Amie, can you tell us, like, how did you decide to become a jewelry designer, or how did you get interested in jewelry in the first place?
So I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. Just a little bit further north of Providence. And my family and friends all had some connection to a big industry in Providence, which was the jewelry industry. So Providence was a city that had lots of manufacturing companies that made what they call costume jewelry, which was jewelry that was manufactured to be fun and bold and affordable. That was part of this city's history for 100 years. When I was studying at Rhode Island School of Design, I was initially going to go into the apparel and fashion design department, and I took some classes there, and I did enjoy it a lot, but I kept walking past the jewelry studio displays in that building, and I couldn't take my eyes off all of the jewelry that the students were making. And so I decided I was going to try it, and then I really wanted to switch to doing something that involved jewelry. It ended up working out that I really enjoyed it, and I stuck with it. And although I still like to do all sorts of other things, I kept going, and I pursued another master's degree in teaching how to make jewelry to adults. And then I have worked as an independent studio jeweler, a designer for jewelry companies, a jewelry teacher and professor, and I kind of combine all those things to make a career that has lasted since 2003 when I finished graduate school.
So basically, when you were a college student looking at those really beautiful pieces of jewelry and you had this dream, you were able to make it come true.
Yes.
That's amazing. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that my students would love to see some examples of your work and some of the tools that you use to make your work. So can we start by, can you tell us a little bit about the necklace that you're wearing right now? Can you show us a little close up?
So I take a lot of materials, metal, and I take, I worked for years in sterling silver, which is a pretty common jewelry material, but I also work in materials like brass and copper and gold, and I cut and hammer and manipulate metal that way. And then I also make castings, which is carving a jewelry wax into different shapes so that it can be embedded in plaster, heated so that the wax melts out of the plaster, and then metal is melted to fill the space that is inside the plaster and turned into a metal version of your wax. And so these are actually made from metal versions of wax carving to become this sort of necklace of like and little jewels. I, kind of do both the casting part where I have a casting company that helps me get the castings done, like a foundry. And then I'll, attach stones or beads or pearls to the casting. So this is an example of another casting where I would take a sawed piece of metal that I would saw all these little holes into it to cut out this elaborate design. And then I would make a rubber mold of whatever it is that I had created, and then inject hot wax into that then would be put through the casting process over and over and over again, so you can get repeats from your original. Then I also do just straight metalsmithing with sheet metal. So this is an example of a piece where I have taken a sheet of titanium metal.
Wow.
And I use and scissors and various cutting tools like a jeweler's saw or a very heavy cutting pair of scissors that are meant for metal. And I cut shapes out of my metal, like
Okay.
little fan kind of shape here. I call it like my fin. I call it a fin.
Finn, yeah.
And I will take my fin and I will hammer it with different texturing hammers. Using this little chiseling hammer right here, I will smash the metal on this steel block, and I smash it over and over and over in a very specific kind of pattern. And that creates all of these little ridges and lines on my metal. So this is an example of like all the little textures that one hammer makes. And each hammer makes different marks. Some make long marks, some make round marks.
Awesome.
And then I take this really cool machine called an anodizer, and I put my finished metal piece that's been like hammered and shaped and then smoothed in every direction so that it's not sharp and the metal doesn't have any kind of hard edges. I use sort of files like this tool right here, a file, to clean the edges of the metal, make it so it's not sharp. And then I put it in this machine called an anodizer, and I dip the metal into an electrocuted pot of water, and it changes the metal's color, and the metal becomes different colors depending on how much electricity I use to touch the metal. And
so then my question is, the amount of electricity means different colors?
Yes. Yeah. So one color, let's say I want a dark blue. A dark blue would mean that I use on this machine, I would set it to send out about 25 volts of electricity, and that would produce a dark blue. And then I would change the voltage to, let's say if I send out 65 volts of electricity, that would make it a warm golden yellow color. And if I send out 115 volts of electricity, that will make it like a jewel beetle green color. And so I can paint with electricity onto the metal, and the metal changes color on its own, and it stays that color. It doesn't change, which is really cool. And so it's a very interesting technique called anodizing.
It's beautiful.
And metals will allow you to do it. Not every metal will let you do it, but titanium is one of the metals that I have recently been working with, and that will allow you to change the colors.
So neat.
Yeah. So I have pieces that have like blue and yellow, and then I have pieces that have like blue with all these little fun green polka dots, and I can pretty much do whatever I want. And sometimes I get surprises, but.
That's so fun. So are there any other tools or any other things that you'd like to show us in your studio that teach us a little bit about how you work?
This is a really cool tool. It's a stretcher that stretches a ring from being a small size to a larger size. You can't stretch it forever, but you can put a ring on the stretcher and then you pump, and the stretcher gets larger, and you can take a ring that is too small and you can gently try to pull it from the inside so that it pushes outwards and becomes slightly larger so that it fits a bigger finger. And what's fun about this one is you can also take a ring that's too big, and sometimes you can smash it down into a hole to make it a little smaller.
Wow.
Kind of a fun tool that I use sometimes in my studio, especially rings are challenge to fit a lot of different sizes, and
sure.
And so this can help me make some changes to somebody's ring if I need to. It doesn't work for every particular design, but it's helpful for a lot of my work, and it's quite fun to put it on it and like stretch it out. Jewelry is very often about circles and circular things that go around the body. So things like a necklace would be a circular shape that would usually go around your neck. Maybe it would hang in a point, but often what a jeweler has to think about is all of these shapes and how they're connected with a lot of circles. So many of my tools are helpful in manipulating circles. So
Okay.
this is one example of the circle of a ring needs to become a bigger circle or a smaller circle. Something that looks a little similar, but it's bigger. This is a circular mandrel. It's for hammering metal into the shape of a wrist-sized circular shape so that you can make a bracelet. Or you can maybe make like a napkin ring or something like that. Then there's a smaller version of that stretcher, which is for hammering a ring on. This is called a ring mandrel. I also have a lot of stamps and textured tools, like fun hammers of all different sizes and shapes, and stamps that you can stamp words into metal. So I have all these cute, they're backwards, like a printing press. And you can take letters, like this one is the letter U, and I can put it down on my metal and stamp it with a hammer, and it makes the U letter impression in my metal so that I can make words onto my metal.
Do you have like a scrap piece of metal where you could show that, what that looks like?
I could. So let me grab a little
Perfect.
copper and my hammering. I have like a basic utility hammer that I use with my stamps so that my fancy headed hammers don't get smashed around too much.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take two letters, H and I, on my phone. So I have the letter H right here. So I have, this is a bench block. It's a hammering surface so that if I stamped into the table, the wood would be very soft and I wouldn't get a good impression. I need to stamp it hard and metal so that it will get a good impression in the metal. There's other uses for stamping into wood, but not this one. All right, so H, and I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, and give it a good smash.
Wow.
I'm gonna go with the letter I, and I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, and smash. And now backwards. It's probably backwards for you, but I have the word hi.
Nope, it's right. That looks great.
Okay.
That is so awesome.
You can stamp all sorts of things, and when you stamp it in the metal, it's stamped permanently. It's pretty hard to get it to reverse back out to a flat piece of metal. So you have to be careful that you're not putting your stamps in the wrong direction or messing up your letters. And then I always have a rule that if you make a mistake, you just make it into art anyway. So
yeah, yes, I love that. And thank you for saying that, because you know, mistakes are one of the things that we talk about a lot in my art room, because if you're an artist, you cannot avoid them. Like, they just are part of art making. And so I think it's so important to hear how in each different art discipline, different people handle mistakes.
I have drawers and drawers full of mistakes or practice things or things that I haven't quite resolved yet that are just sitting and waiting to be dealt with. And parts and components that are just all a big part of the entire picture of how my work comes together. So I believe in sort of recycling ideas and saving things and regenerating things and finding new ways to interpret an old piece and seeing how that changes it. And that has informed my teaching, it has informed my design work, and they all kind of contribute to one another in my areas of practice. So
amazing. Well, Amie, this has been so special for my kids to be able to see just a little window into the world of jewelry making. And I think that a lot of my students, when they think of jewelry, they think of, you know, making beads or friendship bracelets, which is that's absolutely a form of art, but metal smithing is super special.
Thank you. The metalsmithing is a really fun part, and it was sort of the magic about why I wanted to learn it, because I did not understand how metal could be shaped and textured and then joined together. And the way I joined it together is with a torch.
Thank you so much for joining us and giving us this little window into jewelry making.
You're welcome. I'm happy to share.